What's going on, guys? It's your boy Big Hero Chris back at you with another one. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe, give me a thumbs up, ring the notification bell, hit me up on Twitter, TikTok, while that's still a thing, I guess. I don't know what's going on, but while you can hit me up on TikTok, it's limited edition like the McRib, man. So do that. Hit me up in the community post, Bluesky, if you still use that. You already know the vibes, and it's Wednesday, so you already know what that means. It's time to talk about AEW. It's time to talk about AEW Dynamite. And I don't know, this is gonna be a review or me just talking about AEW. I don't know, but here we are, man. Because the reason I'm starting the video off like this is because if you've been on social media, if you've been on Twitter this past weekend, you saw that Tony Khan dropped the graphic for the main event of Collision, and that is the big 12-man tag team match between Rated FTR, the Outrunners, and Powerhouse Hobbs taking on the team of the Learning Tree and the Death Riders. And I don't know if it's because there's a full moon. I don't know if everybody just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but it seems like everybody and their mama was just ragging on Tony Khan for this, or just in the mentions, in the comments, in the quote tweets, just dragging Tony Khan because nobody wanted to see this. Nobody wants to see this. And the main reason is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, storyline wise, it doesn't make sense for the Death Riders and the Learning Tree to link up. John Moxley and Chris Jericho are like sworn enemies. They're like day one enemies ever since the beginning of AEW. And on top of all that, both of these storylines suck, right? The Death Rider storyline isn't all that good. Nobody cares about the Learning Tree. So when you have two bad storylines together just to make one massively horrible storyline, I don't know, man. I feel like with AEW, it's just been a buildup of a lot of things. The Lucha Brothers situation, the Rey Fenix situation, the whereabouts of Ricky Starks, and then you have the booking of the shows, ratings, attendance, and it seems like this was kind of like the feather that knocked everything over, the gust of wind that knocked over the Jenga board, the straw that broke the camel's back, because everybody was just like, yo, please, Tony Khan, please don't do this, we're begging you to pivot. And it seems like every time AEW takes any type of momentum, any type of steps forward, they do something that makes you just question whether or not you still want to watch or not. Now, I watch because I'm an overall fan of wrestling. I'm an overall fan of AEW. And on top of that, content for the YouTube channel. But there's some weeks, like last week, I didn't review Dynamite at all. One, because I was extremely tired and I didn't get a lot of sleep. Two, there were a couple of segments on Dynamite that just flat out put me to sleep. One of which was this whole situation between MJF and Jeff Jarrett. Now, the way the feud started last week, I didn't really care for. Like I said, it put me to sleep. This week, I really didn't care about it. And they were just in the middle of the ring just talking for like 15 minutes. And it felt like 15 of the longest minutes of my entire life. It felt longer than the last 30 minutes of work. It was just non-stop. I was just begging for it to end, and they just kept talking, and they were just trying to out-insult each other, and it's just like, who wants to see this? Who is this for, right? And then what made it even worse was you had Jeff Jarrett in the back, talking about the whole MJF situation. And then of all people to come up and hype up the situation, it was Dustin Rhodes. And I'm like, how does this get worse? Because I really don't care about Dustin Rhodes either. And on top of that, this man is not only the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, but he's 1/3 of the Ring of Honor Trios Tag Team Champions. And you haven't seen the Von Erichs in weeks, damn near months. And I'm like, how is this man champion? There's plenty of other options you could have put those belts on, and instead you give him the Dustin Rhodes. Like, come on, fam. And it's things like that is just really frustrating about AEW, because like I said, they do so much cool things, like the return of Kenny Omega. He had his first match back in AEW in about a year or so, and he's wrestling Brian Cage, and him and Brian Cage are having a really good match. You have Don Callis on commentary, talking his trash. Kenny Omega is doing his thing. Brian Cage is doing his thing. Kenny Omega ended up getting the win with the one-wing angel. And then after the match, he gets jumped by the Don Callis family, and you have this new dynamic between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. Like, you have two sworn enemies kind of coming together because they both equally hate the Don Callis family, and more importantly, they hate Don Callis. So it makes sense for them to kind of come together. And it's looking like it's teasing a tag team match between Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay taking on Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher. And that's something I would really love to see. And I'm assuming it's going to happen at Grand Slam. And that should be a fire match. And I'm kind of like wanting to see Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega as a team going forward. Like, maybe they go after the tag team titles. Speaking of the tag team championships, you have Private Party teaming up with Mark Briscoe, and they're taking on the Hurt Syndicate. And I was thinking, like, either one or two things is going to happen. Either the first thing is it's going to be Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley and a new member, or the latter, which was all three members of the Hurt Syndicate wrestling. And that includes MVP, who hasn't wrestled in, like, I think he said 2 years. And he still looks good, man. He's still doing the ball and elbow drop. The Hurt Syndicate, they're busting heads and beating up people. They're hurting people like the song says. And that's another group that I wouldn't mind seeing win the tag team titles. The problem with this is the fact that Private Party hasn't been booked well since they won the tag team titles. They've been booked well going into, them winning the tag titles, but ever since they won those championships, they've been barely getting any TV time. They're either on Rampage, which isn't a thing anymore, or Collision. And it's like, I wouldn't mind seeing the Hurt Syndicate win these titles if Private Party was booked a little bit stronger, and they haven't been. And it's making Private Party look weak because you already know they're not going to beat the Hurt Syndicate. You already know Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin are taking those titles off those poor black men's hands. And it's just really frustrating because Private Party is one of your day one tag teams. They're a team that people really care about. They're a team that people are really invested in. And to see them being booked like this is just frustrating. It's just really, really, really frustrating. But it's tough because I like the Hurt Syndicate. So it's really like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, man. Something else that's really cool that I'm really liking, that is the heel turn of Ricochet. Like, he's really owning up to this character. He's really getting into it. He's really, working the crowd. And he can barely get a word out because he's getting booed out of the building. And then, we have whose house? Swerve's house come out, and he gets his revenge for being stabbed in the head with a pair of golden scissors. And then Tony Khan made the match official for 3 weeks from now in Atlanta, Georgia. Is going to be Ricochet taking on Swerve. And that match should be fire, 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 dope, 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 dope. And I'm excited to see that. And it's things like this that I get excited to see. But then Tony Khan will turn around and book Tomohiro Ishii versus Okada. Now, don't get it twisted, man. Both of these guys are New Japan legends. Okada's doing this thing. The problem is, in AEW, Ishii, he kind of just shows up and just does things, but he never really wins, right? Like, I can't remember the last time this man won a match in AEW, and it's like, he just shows up and he just gets title matches, and it's kind of like, all right, it's Ishii. And the way they book Ishii, it kind of just takes away the importance of him. It takes away the novelty of him. Me personally, I kind of get tired of seeing Ishii. It's like, yo, he's here again. Who cares, right? And I know somebody does care, but I don't care. And something else I started to care about, but now I kind of don't, is this whole thing with Christian Cage. And he finally gets his match against Hook. And for what it was worth, man, the match was okay. There was shenanigans, and it looked like Hook was going to win with the Red Rum. And then he had the Christian Coalition pull up, and they were attacking Hook. Yeah, Shibata, he was out there. He was trying to help out Hook. And I was kind of thinking, man, it would be cool if Samoa Joe comes back. And Samoa Joe actually came back, and I was excited. I'm jumping around, I'm running around, I'm high-fiving invisible people because Samoa Joe is back. And I'm excited because Samoa Joe is one of my favorites. And that just made this feud a little bit more interesting to see two former TNA rivals coming back together in AEW to face each other, hopefully. And something I kind of hope will happen, it probably won't, but I'm hoping against hope, is that you have Samoa Joe and Christian wrestle for Christian's contract to wrestle for the AEW Championship. And Samoa Joe wins, and maybe he can be the one that defeats the Death Riders, but I highly doubt that. Something else that was cool is this women's gauntlet match, and it felt like it was shorter than the Jeff Jarrett MJF thing, and I'm like, you could have cut that in half and gave the women more time, but it is what it is. So we got the return of Bayne. Bayne is someone we haven't seen in AEW in quite a while. They said on commentary she was wrestling on Dark a little bit, and then she was doing her thing in Japan. She was doing her thing all over, but it looks like she's back in the mix. She's back in AEW, and she was looking like a star. Like, you had Mariah May on commentary talking about, who is this? Why is she here? I left Stardom and she shows up in Stardom and she looks like she eats children. I'm like, what the fuck? So that was pretty cool. And you had Willow Nightingale. She was looking like a star. Chris Statlander, her and Willow were kind of working together, and then they started beating each other up. Julia Hart was out there. She was wrestling against Jamie Hayter. You had Harley Cameron pull up, and I was that was a small part of me that was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if Harley Cameron won? But all that went out the window once I heard Toni Storm's music, and I'm like, I already see where this is going. I already see what time it is, and to my surprise, actually it wasn't a surprise, Toni Storm is going to wrestle Mariah May at Grand Slam in Australia. So I don't know, man. Maybe Mariah May loses, maybe she wins. I don't know, but I'm kind of intrigued to see how this whole Amnesia storyline with Toni Storm goes, especially with her getting her rematch against Mariah May. The whole she's a rookie thing, I don't know. The match should be good because they've had a good match before. So yeah, there's that. And of course, the last thing we got to talk about is this whole bullshit Death Rider storyline, man. And Jon Moxley, man, what happened, bro? When this whole Death Rider story first started, I was intrigued. I was locked in. When people were saying, well, what's the story? I'm like, man, the story is right there. I mean, he said he wants to make AEW better. He's doing his thing. He's doing it by any means necessary. He's choking out Bryan Danielson. He's hitting Private Party in the hand with hammers. Like, he's just trying to take over AEW. He's trying to be the top guy in charge. He said everyone works for him. And somewhere along the way, all that went out the window, and now the Death Riders are just a heel faction, and they took over the Superstation and killed Rampage, I guess. But other than that, they're not really doing the whole takeover AEW thing. They're just pretty much the Blackpool Combat Club with Marina Shafir and Pac involved now. So I don't know. And there was a small part of me that was thinking maybe Powerhouse Hobbs can win the AEW Championship. That wasn't the case. Now, I will say this, as far as the match goes between Powerhouse Hobbs and Jon Moxley, Powerhouse Hobbs looks very strong. Like, Jon Moxley did do a good job of making Powerhouse Hobbs look strong. You had the whole entire Death Riders cheating for Jon Moxley. You had Marina Shafir hitting him, Powerhouse Hobbs in the head with a briefcase. You had Wheeler Yuta hitting the Psycho knee on the outside. And Jon Moxley's hitting this man with a paradigm shift, and he kicked out at one. He's kicking out the Psycho knee. It took all that and for Jon Moxley to choke him out with a bulldog choke for Powerhouse Hobbs to lose. He didn't tap out. He just passed out. And I will say that they did do a good job of making Powerhouse Hobbs look strong. So hopefully when he eventually does win the AEW Championship, it's going to mean a lot more, I guess. That's what wrestling has taught me. But another thing that wrestling has taught me is that, you know, never depend on FTR and Edge to come out to save you, because they will pretty much leave you high and dry. Because after the match, the Death Riders were attacking Hobbs. They were had the man's knee locked in the chair, and Claudio stopped the chair. And then FTR came out at the end after the attack was done. And my whole thing was like, I know you guys are in the back watching this, because there's this big 12-man tag, so I know there's a part of you that's watching Powerhouse Hobbs back. Why did it take them so long to come out to save Hobbs? They didn't really save Hobbs, because by the time they came out, the damage was already done. Hobbs' knee is cooked. Is he going to wrestle on the big 12-man tag? I don't know, and I don't care, man. It looks horrible, man. I was so on the fence with this Death Rider storyline, and I'm like, I'm off, man. I'm off of it. I don't care anymore. I don't care. I don't care that they're carrying around the AEW Championship in a briefcase. I don't care about the fact that the Trio Champions never come out with their titles. I don't care, man. How did they screw this up? I don't know. And I'm not entirely sure if they can get this back on track. And I guess the only saving grace about this was eventually Darby Allin was going to win the AEW Championship. But this Joker is climbing Mount Everest. And that takes a long time to happen. Like, you got to prepare, you got to train for it. And you don't just climb Mount Everest in a couple of hours. That takes time to do. And you have the recovery time from climbing Mount Everest. So there's no telling when Darby Allin's going to come. And maybe he wins the championship, maybe he doesn't. I don't know, man. But AEW is so frustrating because they're so capable of putting on a good product, but they just do so much dumb shit, and it's really frustrating. But it does feel good to get this off my chest. With that being said, guys, how do you feel about this episode of Dynamite? How do you feel about AEW in general? How do you feel about the Death Riders? How do you feel about MJF and Jeff Jarrett? Let me know in the comment section below. Of course, as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You guys take care. Bees, I'm out. Peace.
Good job. So, suck it to me.